Welcome to Up Close. I'm Bill Ritter. The Biden administration last week announcing a new immigration policy that could offer some relief to thousands of people. The executive action would allow the spouses of some U.S. citizens without legal status to apply for permanent residency and eventual citizenship. To be eligible, the spouses must have been here for at least a decade. It's a decision that could impact 500,000 families.
This action still requires undocumented spouses to file all required legal paperwork to remain in the United States. It requires them to pass a criminal background checks, and it doesn't apply to anyone trying to come here today. It only applies, this action is a better way. It doesn't tear families apart while requiring every undocumented spouse to fulfill their obligations under the law.
The announcement came on the 12th anniversary of DACA. Remember that? But many of the same groups that support this move criticized Mr. Biden when earlier this month he signed another executive order that prevents migrants from seeking asylum at the southern border when crossings surge. The White House has faced fierce criticism from former President Trump and other Republicans for the huge influx of migrants who have arrived here since the COVID restrictions imposed by Mr. Trump were removed by Mr. Biden. Lots to talk about. And joining me this morning is Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who, as a child, came into the U.S. from the Dominican Republic as an undocumented immigrant, very much now a citizen, and the first citizen to become a congressman.
That's correct.
In the United States. So how do you basically explain these big things that Mr. Biden did from two ends of the problem?
Well, it's a step forward, Bill. Immigration is very complex. You know, you have dreamers, farm workers, family reunification, TPS recipients, deportations. It's a very complex issue. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-issue debate. So this is addressing two of those issues, right? One of them is, of course, the spouses of U.S. citizens and their children, by the way.
And their children, right.
Yeah, 500,000 spouses, 50,000 kids. So they'll be able now to regularize their status without having to go back to their country of origin.
We're talking about, in general, the dreamers, and in part. And in fact, there was a period not that long ago when that was the law. That was the rule.
That's correct. The other group is the dreamers, right? DACA recipients who are now, if they graduated from a U.S. university and have a job offer, will be able to get a work permit, and they'll be able to work. Right now, they can't work, even if they graduate from one of our schools. It makes no sense. The economy needs them. These are nurses. These are small business owners, homeowners. These are teachers, young people that have grown up in the United States. Some of them came as young. One of them was there with President Biden and made the announcement. He came when he was 3. He's not a male nurse. And he's married. He has a family, but he can't work.
Mr. Biden was part of the administration that brought that first into being law, right? The Obama
That's correct.
administration.
That's correct.
And,
yes.
and you know, you remember this and what happened, and it made a lot of sense. And even, I would say, very conservative people understood the logic. There was a lot of debate about it.
It polls over 70%.
Exactly.
Over 70% of Americans understand that a young boy, a young girl that came when they were 1, 2, 3 years old, and is now an adult, and hasn't broken the law and lives here and doesn't have their green card should be allowed to stay. They're Americans, but for one thing, that piece of paper.
And the president, Mr. Biden, did a reverse on his own policies before. And a lot of people said, well, Republicans and Democrats, it was about time because we were being flooded by migrants seeking asylum and other things. The Republicans should have liked that, and yet they sort of oppose that too.
Well, they oppose everything he brings up. So he's going to do border security. They oppose that. He's going to bring moms and families together. They oppose that. And so they want to weaponize the issue to score political points in November. But Biden has shown leadership. Consensus is not easy. Consensus means you can't have everything. I don't like all of the things that he supported with regards to border security. But I understand there has to be a balance, and there has to be some level of border security, as well as some reform to allow families to come together. So this is a great opportunity to start the debate, the broader debate, as we move forward.
Among your Republican counterparts, I'm sure you've talked to them about this. What do they think about Mr. Trump getting involved and really, taking over the House? There's no question about that. And he wants them to listen to him.
some of them are for the reforms. The Dignity Act is led by a Republican woman from Florida, Maria Elvira Salazar, former anchor woman in Florida. And she has other Republican sponsors, co-sponsors, and that's a bipartisan, comprehensive bill for immigration reform. Some of them are sensible, and some of them understand that immigration must be resolved, that we're not going to be judged as a nation by the kind of bank account that we have or the degree that we have. We're going to be judged how we treated those that came behind us, whether we lifted them, the neediest among us. That's the quality, the human quality of America. And so some of them understand that, and they won't listen to him.
Well, that's one of the issues that I think most people just don't understand why there hasn't been some sort of resolution to. Why is it that all these presidents have never been able to put together a real, honest to goodness, fair, just immigration policy?
It has to be bipartisan. It took me long and hard to understand that it's not my way or the highway. Yeah. It has to be bipartisan, and it has to be a give and take. And I think the conditions is so polarized in D.C. That we won't even have a meal together, that it doesn't allow for that kind of consensus building.
When I was a kid, my father, back when he was growing up in Kansas, was one of very few Jewish families. He would get beat up every day for being Jewish. When I was born and he moved to California, I remember this. I remember this like it was yesterday. Something bad would happen to someone on the television news, and he'd go, "Oh, please, I hope it's not a Jewish guy they arrested." Because that's the way ethnicities felt. That's the way ethnicities felt. So how do we deal with this? You know, we are looking right now, this week, in this city where you're a congressman of, and you represent, you know, you had a guy from Ecuador.
Yes,
who is charged with raping a 13-year-old.
Horrible crime, yes.
Horrible. And some guys in the hood got him, and they held him down until the police.
Young guys, too.
Right. So are migrants, immigrants here, legal or not, saying, "Oh, I hope it's not an immigrant"?
You know, you always feel that. I always feel that inside of me. I say, I hope it's not, you know, a Dominican person. I hope it's not an immigrant. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that most immigrants are law-abiding residents. You know, most immigrants don't go out there trying to get in trouble and get arrested and deported. In fact, studies have come out from several institutions. I think Cornell did a study that showed that they get arrested far less than American citizens. And so they're not crime-ridden. They're not the cause of a spike in crime in urban cities. They just want to come in and work and provide for their families. There will be some bad apples, just like in any other group. And of course, we reject that. But it's, for sure, they're not the cause of mayhem and
right.
problems.
And most of the, as you say, most of the surveys done and the studies done say that no, they're here to support their families back home.
That's correct.
And hopefully get some freedoms here, because that's what they were here for.
You know, it's a blood transfusion for New York City to have many of them here. You could almost see it in their faces, right? And they have that drive, right? That drive to move forward.
Of course. Look what your parents did.
And they will reinvent the city. And someday, Bill, they'll have a congressman.
And they have one. So what does that say for what we expect of people in New York? This is a melting pot. This is a city where people live together, close by together, on top of each other, next block from each other, and very different kinds of people. How do we make this? Because this is since the Israel-Hamas war, we have been challenged to make this work. Because if the other people in the Middle East had lived like people do in New York, to try to get along with people, they wouldn't be having these problems.
You know, I think New York City continues to be the great experiment, right? And if we can't do it as adults, our kids will find it in their classroom. You know, they'll meet in our classrooms, and they will know who the other kid is and where they came from and what language they speak and what God they preach to. And at the end, at midday, they will all go downstairs to the cafeteria together.
And if we don't do that, what happens to our son?
I mean, we'll split apart, but I don't think New York City is going to do that. We're very resilient. I think that we will continue to be a melting pot and probably the great example of the world.
Well, the truth is, your family, your background reflects that very theory.
Well, when we came here, there weren't many Dominicans. My grandmother was here before I was born. She was a seamstress. in Midtown Manhattan.
There you
So it was a different New York. But now, of course, we're front and center. We're part of New York.
And you're certainly part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Espaillat, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.